Rolling Stones continues now with Mick Jagger. I can't think of another person in the 20-year history of rock and roll who has so consistently captured the imagination of the media as has Mick Jagger. Having never met Mick before, I didn't know quite what to expect. What I found was a man who is open and friendly, terribly charismatic, and really quite fascinating. To get Mick to talk seriously is not easily done. After all, he is interviewed so many times, it's not hard to understand why he tries to make a game out of it. But I think what you are about to hear is as straight-ahead talking you have ever heard from Mick Jagger. We first asked him about the new album, The Rolling Stones' Love You Live.
We know most live, but there have been a lot of live albums around, and most of them were taken from big shows, and so were ours. And we thought it would be a nice change to record something in a small club. Not so much for the music, perhaps, as the atmosphere, would be totally different. So it wouldn't be like that big audience, but an audience as a sort of mass thing. It would be a small thing. It also gives us a chance maybe to fool around a little. So I think both things happened, and it's a different atmosphere.
About how many people get seated at the Combo in Canada?
Seated, I don't know. It holds 300.
Oh, it's that small?
Yeah, it's really small.
Kind of like the bottom line here in New York.
Yeah, it's more than the bottom line. Yeah. The bottom line's about 500. But it's really small. And also gave us an opportunity to play more as what we felt like, because there was not so much pressure on you. As to play in a big place, you have to be really spot on every number.
Now, when you were at the Combo, that was the first time that the Rolling Stones were in a club that size and...
God, wow. Yeah,
what's a while?
A while.
Better than 10 years, I guess.
I guess. I don't know. Yeah. I can't remember.
So, did you guys get together to do that with an album in mind, or did you just kind of... how did it come about? Did you just kind of sit around and say, gee, it would be great to get in a small club again? And...
No, we did it because we wanted to put a side on the album, which was recorded slightly differently. We didn't know it was going to come off or not. We could have easily done it without that. We had enough material. As I said before, we kicked a lot of numbers off. But we thought it might make a change, it might make a difference to the album to give it something a little different. And the numbers that we rehearsed all kinds of numbers. We did new numbers that we'd never recorded, new songs, that had never been out. And we did old blues, we did a regular show, we did, Under My Thumb, we did everything. But when it came down to it, we picked out those blues ones as being the ones that seemed to work.
I love particularly track 2, old blues tune, done reggae style.
Oh, Cracking Up.
Cracking Up. It's fun. It's really fun to listen to.
That was a Bo Diddley song originally.
Yeah.
And we just did it sort of reggae style.
Why did you pick the Combo as opposed to all of the clubs you could have possibly gone into in the world?
I don't remember. I really can't remember. I remember going there once and thinking that was quite nice. Maybe we shouldn't have picked the Combo. There was so much trouble that week.
Well,
could have picked somewhere easier to play.
You're going to have trouble any small club. Did word get out that... how was the 300 people who were in there selected?
Pretty quiet. We made a competition to win it. You won a hamburger autograph party with the Rolling Stones. We didn't say we were actually going to play.
What, through a radio station?
Through the radio station up there, yeah.
So the 300 people who were in there were all contest winners?
Oh, yeah.
What a treat.
And they didn't really know that they were going to see us until they actually got in the bus and got to the gig.
They didn't know until they walked in what they were going to see?
The first night. And the second night they knew because everyone had read about it.
Yeah, that's really amazing. That's great. What a treat for those people.
They didn't know at all that we were going to play. We were rehearsing for about a week for it, because it's very different to play in a club. You have to rehearse differently, play differently.
Was it fun?
Yeah, it's easier in a way playing in a club. Because you can hear the rest of the band much easier.
When you say you, do you think you can speak for the rest of the guys in the Rolling Stones?
I speak for them.
Okay.
I speak for themselves.
Oh, you don't speak for them like that.
I don't.
Whether they score on those 3 points. Energy, sexuality, and adolescence. Adolescence, feel like an adolescent, identify.
You don't have to feel like that all the time. You don't have to feel like that all the time, only part of the time. You don't have to really feel like that all the time. An adolescent doesn't feel like an adolescent all the time. An adolescent is striving for maturity a lot of the time. You've got to be able to feel it. And I don't have any problems feeling it. It's frustrating feeling adolescent, in a way.
Very frustrating.
It's frustrated sexuality a lot.
I wanted to talk to you about being a father.
Mm-hmm.
How old is Jade?
She's 5 and almost 6.
Now, do you think it's going to be, I mean, now she's 5 or 6 and might not be a problem, but do you think, and since she is not you, but your daughter, do you think it might be tough for her sometime in the future?
Yeah, it might be, and it could be. It depends on her, really, how she handles it.
And in a sense, depends on you and her mother and how...
I handle her.
Right.
Oh, and it depends how she handles it in a way, because children are very single-minded in other ways. And by the time they get to the age of 7, they've got very definite ideas. So that's not that far away.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on how they are intelligent as children, which is something that you really can't do a lot about, and how you treat them, and vis-a-vis this particular question, we're not talking about anything more general than that.
Right.
Then there's no reason to suffer from it. There's every reason to gain. But if the child is of a particular nature where the child would like to sort of would go the wrong way, or like a Hollywood child star or something, or if I lived in Hollywood, for instance, it would be more dangerous perhaps than living in London, where things are a much more even keel.
So traditionally, the children of the very famous have had a tough time. And not all of them, of course, but
I don't
in
know
many
if they all
instances.
have.
I mean, look at Churchill's children is probably the best example of it.
Well, they also intelligence, and this is a generation. But yeah, I don't think you could compare that. I think you could compare bringing up a child, say, in Hollywood, with a sort of film star father. It could be very difficult. But as I say, in London, I don't see it as a problem. I think she'll be, because she's a very level-headed girl and quite bright enough to be able to handle it.
Something I read that you said that domesticity is death.
No, domesticity is the enemy of the artist. That's Rambo.
Domesticity is the
enemy of the artist. It's Rambo. Yeah, it is, because it's very hard to lead a settled, domesticated life and still carry on creating in the way that you could if you were alone. I mean, it's just everything's too peaceful and nice and calm and too settled.
And that's some of the domestic scenes I know of.
Yeah, well, yeah, but it's true that. I mean, and domestic bliss does not help create, especially in rock and roll.
Do you think an artist really has to suffer to be able to create? He can't have a really happy life?
Rubbish. A lot of people do, but not everybody. Well, not every great artist had to suffer. I mean, a lot of them did suffer, and out of that suffering, a lot of great work came. But a lot of great artists didn't suffer, and they created a lot of great things. I don't think it's a necessity to suffer.
Do you suffer?
I don't
much?
think it's clever to suffer. I mean,
do you suffer much?
No, not particularly.
Is your life content, fulfilling, most of the time?
Yeah, I think it's reasonably fulfilling. I don't think it's suffering. I don't see why one should suffer. I don't think that's the aim of life. Is certainly not to suffer, I would think.
For sure, but so many other people.
Christians believe perhaps it is.
I guess a lot of people believe it is. So many other people have been, in a real sense, done in by the kind of fame and riches and adulation that a guy like yourself gets. How do you keep it all in perspective? I mean, you're telling me that you are leading a happy and content life. And how do you keep it all in perspective?
I think you've got to be pretty thick-skinned, Anyone that's really sensitive, or sensitive to the wrong things, is in for a lot of trouble. I mean, they believe what they read, or they believe what people tell them, or they get surrounded by the wrong people, or I don't know. They believe in themselves. I mean, in French, they call them mythomaniacs. You can't believe in it. You mustn't take yourself too seriously.
So you don't buy the myth of Mick Jagger?
Certainly not. I wouldn't pay a dime for it.